Alright, let's get this show on the road, people. Starting this up. I should just move these books aside. Got anything here that could be used as a here. Not that I want to use that book like that, but what the hell. Right, so let me grab my, take a first sip for barakah purposes, of chilled and hot as well. Hot and cold, people. Hot and cold. Right, so let's put that over there. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا Juan Layth, bienvenidos a todos, بخير راغله, خوش آمدید people, and swagatam. Right, so let me first and foremost, let me just get this out there, share this, people. Look at this, I switch this on and I get flooded with all these messages. Yeah. ¿Qué pasa? What's going on here, people? What? Right, there it is. I'm onto it. We just share. Right, post. Come on. This is... My phone's decided to go proper handicap mode. Come on, mother. This is like... Alright, people. We is live. Ahlan wa sahlan bil qawm. Mi gente. Alright, كيف الأمور? Abu Mu'adh is in the house. Abu Mu'adh, is that you though? My stunt double. A big shout out from Rochdale. The Rochdale crew. I don't know now. Everybody, that's like it just, all of a sudden there's a silence in the room. Where you from, Minnie Cuzzy? I'm from Rochdale, Linny and Diney, and it's like, is the tea drugged? And that confused moment when you're hoping it is drugged. Alright, ¿qué está pasando, mi gente? What is going on? Abdul Kareem, ahlan wa sahlan. Ayub al-Maliki, how are you doing? Things are good, lillahi alhamd. I've actually, I don't know whether I hope I haven't fractured my foot, but I hope it's just a bruise and a sprain, that's all it is. But I've hurt my foot. I fell off this hoverboard. So I'm really totally... these hoverboards are just so awesome. This is like my childhood being relived. It's like the things I couldn't do. And now I'm like, whoa. So I got both my little daughters, I got them a hoverboard each. So they were going on about it for a while. So I said to... the eldest, who's 8, I said, I'll only get you if you can train the other one first. So they used their cousin's kind of hoverboard. And once they were both okay at it, so I got them both a hoverboard. And then, boy, I just love the damn thing. So I would just go down at night, and then I'd just be like, oh, on the hoverboard. It's so awesome. It's as though it's alive. You know, it can sense the subtle new. It's like it knows you want to turn. It'll just turn. It's like, wow. You know, the child in you awakens. So I've been proper messing about on that for a good couple of days now. And yesterday I was playing Tig and Tag with my 5-year-old Zara on it. So Tig Tag chasing on the hoverboard, both of us on the hoverboard. And oh my God, I buckled up so bad. I went flying. I didn't expect to fly. And I came down on the side of my foot like bang. And I think I heard something which is not what you want to hear. And I don't know, man. Since then, it's been all a bit buckled. Today, it's been a bit better. So I've put some kind of like iced it up and let it rest and OD'd on my vitamins and all of that stuff and all the glucosamine sulfate and the glutamine, and I thought, let me check out the magical powers of all of these things. I don't know, man. If it doesn't, I read somewhere, if it doesn't get better within about 4 or 5 days, then go see the doctor. I've thought, what the hell? So I've ordered myself these braces, and I've been walking around with like my version of a walking stick today. Anyway, that's what's going on in my wonderful, colourful life. I'm just thinking, should I submit an application for like disability benefits? Wasim ji, ahlan wa sahlan, ahlan wa sahlan. Haris Sultan is in the house. Marhaban, marhaban. Alright. Haris ji, I'm going to be addressing that hadith today because I saw you quote it. So I thought this is indeed an interesting discussion, and I'll come to that, but it's to do with, for those of you that ain't so sure, it's to do with a hadith in which allegedly the Prophet is saying that the daughter that was buried alive, in addition to the culprit who buried her, is in the hellfire. So both of them are in the hellfire. And I'll do a complete analysis of that hadith. Obviously, I don't believe the hadith to be true or authentic, but this then ties into a greater backdrop, a greater question of what is the outcome, the ukhrawi, the eschatological. People, you think only you have education. Oh, the eschatological. What is the akhirah outcome, the afterlife outcome for children who pass away? Is it salvation? Is it damnation? What is it? And so it ties into that discussion. And we'll take a little look at that as well, people. So, in addition to that, I did want to look at, you see, I was speaking to Abu Mu'adh, and he brought to my attention this verse of the Quran. And I was like, huh? Is that a verse as well? Right, so, I've left the window open. I should have closed it, but now, getting up on my one handicapped leg, I don't know if it's the best thing to do, so might have to just... There's a lot of planes that fly by over here. So, right. So he brought to my attention this verse in Surah Yusuf, and I'd like to explain that in a bit of detail a little later on today as well. And that is the verse to do with when Yusuf alayhi salam interprets the dream for the person, but then the person forgets to tell, to repay the favor, and Yusuf alayhi salam remains in prison for a few years that follow. Now the issue here is that some people, I wasn't really thinking about this before, but it was brought to my attention that many people understand this to mean that God was punishing Yusuf alayhi salam, which I would find absurd. And obviously I'll come to that explanation a little later on today when we do a bit of serious talk, serious talk. So till then, what is going on? Chris Johnson says, are you a Mujtahid fil madhab? Are you a Mujtahid? I am a Mujtahid. Yeah, of course I'm a Mujtahid. But the problem is, to assess my level of ijtihad, you have to be a Mujtahid as well. So this one big problem, because if you claim to assess me, then you're also claiming to be a Mujtahid. And if you're not a Mujtahid, then you can't claim to assess me. This one, I got this one on lock. This one gridlock. Snookered. Basil says, MashaAllah, brother, MashaAllah, right back at you. Hope things are well. Matiur Rahman says, Mata سنقابل إن شاء الله عن قريب عن قريب. Ahlan wa sahlan, people. Sayyid Mia, this one confusing. You see, this whole palaver, right, people? It's nothing but a game, right? So some of the scholars, what they've done is they've come up with these impossible criteria to be able to come up with opinions and to claim independence. And obviously none of this is documented in the Quran or Sunnah, but everybody knows that to be a scholar, the likes of, let's say, to come up with your own ijtihad, your way of thinking, you have to have some talent about you. Of course, that's indisputable. But what is this talent? How do we measure it? Can we quantify it? This obsession with quantification, people. So it led certain scholars. So the early scholars of this ummah would just say a scholar, an alim, a faqih is synonymous with the term mujtahid and so on. And you'll see this in books like the Waraqat of Juwayni. But later scholars want to quantify everything. So they started to make a list that begins here. And it ends, I don't know, maybe if you grab the list and keep running, by the time you hit, I don't know, Cape Town in South Africa, hopefully the list has hopefully come to an end, or it's getting ready to wrap up. So this is just absurd. But then they shoot themselves in the foot, because what they say is, obviously we're not mujtahids, but only a true mujtahid can assess another mujtahid. So you see, if a person was a mujtahid, you would never know unless you claim to be a mujtahid. So it's a bit of a paradox that they created. So it's like Jalaluddin as-Suyuti. To be fair, he was, obviously he was a legend in his own right. So he gets very, in a moment of pride, he makes an announcement that I am a mujtahid. And then all hell breaks loose. And people are like, what the hell? What the one any? This one say he mujtahid any. So you get all the Qazi bro ulama kind of emerge out of the woodworks. And right, so so people are like, well, they're stressing him out. So then what he says is that, look, he says, hold your horses, people, hold your horses. He says, well, okay, I can't really say I'm a mujtahid, because to be a mujtahid, I've got to be assessed by a mujtahid. He says this. Or for you to assess me, and then he kind of just wiggles out of it, says, I don't really know any mujtahids in this day and age, and I can't cross-reference with them, and therefore I'm not so sure if I am one. This is like, I don't know, I'm an X-Man, one of the X-Men. I don't know if I've got special powers or I don't know, I might have special powers. Anyway, so that's some of the drama that these scholars faced in their lifetime. Robin, ahlan wa sahlan, marhaban, bienvenidos. What's a mujtahid? Sorry for spelling. A mujtahid is basically, in its real essence, it's just meant to mean a scholar who can go about figuring out the deen. And so he can assess things, synthesize rulings, and do things like that. But then you've got this technical criteria with later scholars, latter-day scholars have made a list of rules. And I said, you know, if you ran from here to, I don't know, South Africa, and somebody said, why did you say South Africa? Well, I was just spanning 2 entire continents. That's what I was doing. Just running right down. That list probably still wouldn't run out. Which is so absurd. It's so stupid, but yeah. Now, right, so what else is going on? Salaf Saleh says, Abu Laf, what's your view on other people who rule other than Allah? You know, I should really leave like a cloth lying around here, but I've got to use my tissue again. Abu Allah, was the ruling any of the people who rule other than Allah? Isn't that kufr? It's like, can you imagine if these people ever got to rule the world? Or if they, forget the world, sorry, if they got to run a country. Can you just imagine? Shall we, it's green for go at traffic lights. But I don't see it in the Quran, so I don't know. Are we making shirk and by making things up against which Allah hasn't said? You see, these people, you know what it is? You know what it is, brother? It's nothing personal, but it's just that you're slowing us down. We gotta cut you guys loose. We gotta cut this whole bloody, there's like a whole trailer. It's not even a trailer. It's like a whole cargo shipload full of the sunshine group that we, the Muslim Ummah, is carrying. You guys are slowing us down. It's not personal. This one not personal. It's just that we need to get ahead, and you guys are like, but this one, I don't see this one in the Quran, any brother, any that. I wonder what a dialogue is like with these people on a daily basis. You know, I just, there's got to be some benefits to being like that, though. There's got to be, like, I'm sure we can. No, I'm just being too harsh. I mean, after all, God made you that way, so we should just. We should just accept the divine decree. It is what it is. I mean, it was willed. It was willed this way, brother. It was willed. God decided not to give you a certain level of IQ. There must be some divine wisdom in that. I mean, think about it. Why push it? Why test God's wisdom? Oh, God. Oh, sorry. The brother just responded. Our methodologies. Sorry, I gotta get into character. Yeah. Our methodology is of the Salafani. We have the methodology of the one you claim to follow, Imam Malik. Oh, we follow him. Oh. Cheers, mate. There you go. You know what it is? I would explain it to you, but I just don't have the crayons around to. I don't have the colouring book around or anything to kind of explain it. That's all. But I would say, look, you know, top marks for attendance. I would love to have a dialogue, by the way, with somebody like this. You know, like, I mean, somebody from the Salaf Saleh, of course. That's what. I think it'd be awesome. None of us would understand each other. It'd just be like, oh, I don't get it. Okay, let's look. I'll try to answer your question, by the way. Look, just comment on the verse any of what Allah says. Okay, okay, brother, I'll comment any. Just imagine these guys are actually right, and they actually had figured this stuff out. And on the Day of Judgment, we're all doomed. And these guys had actually figured. Imagine that. It turns out that they'd actually figured it out. That would be one sick joke. That would just be like, All right, cool. Let's get to this verse. Let's get to this verse. Ow, my foot. This one, disable. You know this one. Ow. All right. So the brother's probably saying, "See, divine punishment." Right. So there's a verse in the Quran actually referring to the Israelites, not even referring to Muslims, but referring to previous nations, and it goes on to state, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ. There's a few variants of it. It says, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ, they are oppressors. فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ, they are disbelievers. So from here, some people, they took this to mean that literally any single opinion that is not found in the Quran, this is, sorry, he's corrected me, there's a third one as well. I never said there wasn't a third, I said there's a few, I did say that. But he said there's also one, say, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ, Fasiqun one as well, Lenny. Why you not read that one? Cause any bro and that. Right, so I'm sorry. Lo siento mucho. Right, so now there's these three verses, but the most powerful one, they are disbelievers. Right, so they feel that does somebody, by not ruling according to, like if they take an interpretation of the Quran and they don't go with the apparent, or if they, I don't even know what this would actually mean, because a real manifestation of this would just, I don't know how that would even be. So these people back in the time of Sayyidina Ali radiallahu an, in the time of Ali radiallahu an, they called him a kafir, because they said, well, you decided to have an arbitration with Muawiyah radiallahu an, and you two shouldn't have arbitrated. You should have just either fought him till the death, or you should have, like, basically to arbitrate means that you, or to accept arbitration means you're prepared to settle and compromise with against the truth. This is their view. So they said to Sayyidina Ali, so that, look, this, this is kufr. And they used the verse of the Quran, inil hukmu illa lillah, that judgment is just for God. And you decided to give judgment. You decided to give judgment. So they called Sayyidina Ali a kafir, they called Muawiyah a kafir, they called just about everybody a kafir. And there was them, mu'minun, the bunch of them, who kind of went off, and this became the group known as the Khawarij. Okay. Right. Now, the verse, look, many people have said that this did not mean kafir in that sense. So there's certain transmissions going back to Ibn Abbas saying that, it's this thing of kufr duna kufr, that it's not kufrun laysa bi kufrin yanqulu anil millah. It's not a kufr that is an apostasy kufr. It's the term kufr. Because you have to remember that the Quran, you see, when we read the Quran today, we read it in a very kind of institutionalized manner. So we've got fixed terminologies, kafir. Every time we see the word kafir, we understand by this institutionalized version of kafir, a disbeliever, an infidel, something like this. But that's not how, when the Quran was being revealed, remember, those people already had the word kafir. What did they mean by kafir? So, like when we read in the Quran the word ulama today, we understand by the clergy. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Indeed, it is the ulama, the clergy, who fear God. This is how people translate it today. But when the Quran was being revealed, there was no clergy. There were no ulama, so to speak. So, you see, we have a very, like a kind of a reverse projection onto the Quran. So we read the Quran with our current day institutionalized baggage, which we retroject onto the Quran. And then we read it. And the truth is, you can't really, like, you can do that, but it's not what they would have understood the Quran to be in that day and age. So when they read, oh, these people are, what a kafir, or somebody, this is kufr, that it is rejection. That if you take the word of God and then don't wholeheartedly kind of embrace it, that is rejection. Does it mean it's an absolute categorical rejection of the creed and the faith? Maybe not, but it could be, depends. So these verses were only really used by the Khawarij, and modern day Khawarij, illegitimate, the illegitimate offspring of the Khawarij today, the people like ISIS and these kind of groups that want to they want dominion and rule and stuff like this. So Salaf Salih just said, yes, this guy has irja. Yes, this one, fasiq, this one. Well, whatever that is, mate, irja. Yep, I'll tell you what, I'll take two of them. So what else is going on? What else is going on? The hadith where the man asked the Prophet 3 questions to prove he's a prophet. Isn't this a contradiction since the questioner is not a prophet? I'm not so sure which particular situation you're referring to, but let's just roll with it for a moment. It's not necessarily the case, because people would sometimes try and set about challenges, and sometimes the challenges would just be rejected, and like they would say, oh, if you are a prophet, why don't you do this? Why don't you bring down something from the sky? Why don't you make there be a spring pop-up of water right here? Why don't you, make, create a garden right here? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And Allah rebukes them by saying, tell them, innama ana bashar, I'm just a human. Why do you make such demands from me? And sometimes then it may have been to do with revelation or questions, like they asked the Prophet about the soul. What does ruh mean? What is the essence, the ontological, people, the essential, to do with the essence of the ruh? What is it? And here Allah says that, tell them, ar-ruh min amri rabbi wa ma utitum min al-ilmi illa qalila. And sometimes they ask questions about the people of the cave, or sometimes they ask questions to do with rulings. These things don't mean that the person who asks must be a prophet. And if a person says to the Prophet, look, if you're a real prophet, then answer this, it doesn't mean that the one asking has to be a prophet. It could just be their way, their method of testing, that's all. Tehran, Awais, Ahlan wa Sahlan. Right, so what else is going on? What is bothering the awesome, fabulous people of Facebook? Let me just put up the brightness here, go into some of the questions. Let's take some questions that you guys have been posting. Oh, we've got a few questions here. When are you, Hez Jamrock, when are you meeting up with Hamza Tzortiz? I don't know. I mean, I'd love to meet up with Hamza Tzortiz. I'd love to have a discussion with him. I'm not sure on what, just anything. I'm sure, he's a great thinker in his own right, and I think it would be great fun. Definitely. I look forward to it. Hez, set it up. Ja Simran, ja, जी ले अपनी जिंदगी. Could you provide your thoughts on this clip of Muhammad Hijab? Well, I can't watch the clip right now, so Nima, don't cry. Salaf Saleh is trying to... Salaf, be quiet, you know, this one... Shh. Crayons, remember. Let's get back to the colouring. When are you going to go through every single narration relating to the age of Aisha? Sure. I have demonstrated that there isn't a single Sahih Hadith, and I did actually comment on it just a few weeks back when I responded to, what's his name, Asadullah al-Andalusi. So I have got some details there. Ifzal says, hope we get some Mufti Masala tonight. What should we talk about on the Mufti Masala? Drop me a hint. Marga Attaf says, do you know, what are your thoughts on Mufti Menk? Do you know him? Right, I don't actually know Mufti Menk personally or anything. Obviously, I know of him. What are my thoughts on Mufti Menk? You see, I think they're ambivalent. They're kind of like mixed. I think on one hand, I feel that, you see, Mufti Menk generally, my impression of him is he just tells kind of like, I don't know if I could say innocent, but let's say for now, innocent stories. Just kind of nice, folkloric kind of stories, which are in short clips. And to the masses, he has a very, he has a persona that fits, if I can say that. I mean, the profile kind of fits. He has this very... I mean, he's not that old. I don't know how old he is, but he doesn't seem old at all. But I've heard people say about him, he has a very, almost like a grandfatherly kind of persona. I don't mean he's that old as a but that kind of persona that somebody... I've read this on a few comments about him, that he has, and people, when they want to have a little boost, they watch some of his clips, and he'll just say a nice story about... I don't know, the prophets, or he'll tell these kind of things, and my impression is that's what he does, and there's obviously a need for that. So somebody like me, I wouldn't be able to really tell those kind of stories, because you see, the problem with a lot of these stories is they're not authentic. So there's one big problem, you know, because a lot of what you're telling is just made up. So, you see, somebody like me, I'm too self-critical to do something like that. About prophets and things like that. Maybe, you know, I could tell a story about a person, and even if it turned out not to be true, for example, let's say we're telling a story about a scholar and it turned out that the story wasn't true. To me, there's no big deal. You know, there's a moral in the story, there's a lesson, and, you know, whoever wants to take it can take it, whoever doesn't. To me, the problem with saying that about prophets is people then take it as doctrine. They take it as creed. They take it as though it's the Quran. You understand? And so Mufti Menk does a lot of that. He tells a lot of stories. And a lot of these stories that he would tell, or the preachers tell, are actually made up and inauthentic. In fact, most of the stories to do with prophets are probably made up. So, on the plus side, I feel that people like Mufti Menk, they fill a void. They are there because there is a need, there is a demand. People want folklore. People want to be able to go into YouTube and watch a clip of somebody that looks not like me, for example, but rather than having something like that, they want somebody who's going to have, like, I don't know, a Saudi scarf on. He's going to have a very long beard flowing. He's going to have a much more of an a monastic, kind of like a monk, like a very ascetic almost, or what they would call pious. I mean, pious, what does piety mean? Piety is not how you dress, but they would call that, oh, maybe that's pious. You know, this person, a hermit-like look. People like that. That sells in religion. Honestly, it sells massively. It sells like hot cakes, people. You know, being very ascetic-like, being almost distant from the dunya. People love that, though. The masses crave that stuff. You know, it's like I've told this story before. One of our teachers, he said, "Oh, there's this Peer Baba in Pakistan, and there was and he was saying in this gathering that, mashallah, have you seen these billboards that they were advertising? You know, there's a cream in Pakistan, like I think it's a facial cream, and it's called Tibet Snow. They call it Tibet Snow. That's the name of the cream. Yeah. So obviously they've written it in Urdu. So it's ta ba ta, like that, Tibet. And in Urdu they don't write voweling. You're just meant to guess what the bloody word says. And it says snow. So sin, noon, wow, you know, like that, snow. So he says, this guy looks at the poster and says, mashallah, ye dekho, you know, look at this. Ye keh rahe hain tabbat, you know, tabbat, the surah of the Quran, tabbat yada abi lahab, tabbat. He says, ye dekho, ye keh rahe hain tabbat suno, like listen, suno, listen to tabbat. So people are like, mashallah, you know, ye buzurg hain, buzurgon ki sadagi, mashallah. You know, he's so removed from this world that in everything he sees the Quran. Sadke Jahm. You know, it's like, this is what, but this stuff sells. You know, if you want to really fly in that market, then this is how you gotta be. You gotta act all kind of naive and dumb, and you gotta make these kind of like a simpleton. So a lot of these preachers, although coming back to Mufti Menk, I don't think Mufti Menk acts like a simpleton. I think he does. He is quite funny sometimes, and he can be kind of chilled out, and I think that's really good. So those are the plus side. I think I do like that about Mufti Menk. That thing that he'll crack jokes, he'll try to be funny, he'll try to tell stories and things like this. The problem that I have with all preachers, not just Mufti Menk, of that genre, is in this void, in filling this void, they also help concretize this kind of false beliefs. They push them out and they cement them, these stories, and they further spread these stories. So I remember hearing something, I remember walking into a shop and somebody had a lecture of Mufti Menk on, and he was talking about the flood of Noah, and he was getting passionate, and he was saying, well, and the whole world was drowned in water, and don't listen to these people because Allah says it in the Quran, the whole world was flooded with water, so we know this. But that's not true, and neither does Allah say in the Quran the whole world was flooded with water. This was just a regional flood. But you see, when you're going to so passionately preach this and then tell people, look, it's in the Quran, then you're partially responsible for that kind of thinking that kind of then permeates the Muslim crowds, because your clips are viral, so you have that responsibility. That's where I disagree with people like Mufti Menk. I also disagree with him. He pushes sometimes a very stern, a very kind of strict interpretation of Islam, and I think he has to do. My personal thinking is that Mufti Menk isn't as strict, nowhere near as strict as he portrays himself. So I think in 50% of what Mufti Menk probably preaches, he probably doesn't believe. Obviously this is just my thinking, I could be wrong, but I don't think he believes in about 50% of probably what he preaches. But he's not exclusive in that. You'll be surprised. Most of the scholars are like that. So he might say to people, birthdays are haram, But himself, he might not believe that. I don't think he personally believes that. But he will say things like this because he's got to speak in accordance. He must echo the sentiments of that crowd. So yeah, so that's my thoughts on people like that. But generally, I think, you know, I'm sure he's a great person. I would love to meet him, sit and have a chat with him and things like this. I'd love to do that, but yeah, let's see. Cool. What else is going on? Is Salaf Saleh still going on? Right, Salaf, we're going to have to block you if you carry on. Somebody said he also believes that pop stars sacrifice children backstage before concerts. If he believes that, may the Lord help us, huh? Right, okay, this guy's causing too much distraction. Right, okay, people, I've just blocked the Salafus Saleh. Salafus Saleh means the pious predecessors. I sure hope that wasn't a kind of virtual avatar of the entire Salafus Saleh that had come together and in some kind of a digital avatar appeared on my Monday nights, and I've just blocked them. The Salafus Saleh decide they crack technology. And they make a kind of like a wormhole through time. And they go, we've got one go at this, guys. Let's do this. And they manage to appear on my Monday nights with Mufti as a cry for help to humanity and to let us know. And I just blocked them. Guys, I think we're all too far gone now. We might as well just ride this one out because I think we've messed up in this world as it is now. Mawlay Sliman, ahlan wa sahlan. Views on Sheikh Hamza. I've already spoken about Sheikh Hamza Yusuf last week. Muhammad Naeem Khan, when will you meet me? He said to me, yes, of course. Reach out to mi compadre, Shaban, on Facebook. He'll set it all up, inshallah. Don't worry about it. When will you meet me? You promise. That's what I'm saying. Reach out to him and he'll set it all up. Yusuf says, your imagination is worse than... My imagination is a bit loco. You know, it's a bit crazy. I think, let's see what other questions are bothering the people. Let's take some questions from here. What else? What are your thoughts on Muqatil ibn Sulaiman and Jahm ibn Safwan? Whoa, that's a technical question right there. I wasn't expecting that. What are your thoughts on Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, Razi? He never put Razi. That's me quote. Yeah. Style. You've got to show the other people that you know as well. I'm sorry, it's just the day and age we live in. We've got to show the knowledge, the knowledge. Otherwise, there's doubt. This one's doubt. So you have to kind of like show that, acha, I know what you're talking about. I'll meet you and I'll raise you. So Muqatil ibn Sulaiman al-Razi, Allah, and Jahm ibn Safwan, acha. What are your thoughts on them? To be honest, I never really thought about them in that way. Huh? Oh, sorry. Oh, wait, they're wrong group, wrong Facebook live, wrong webcam. I don't know what you mean by this, by the way. What are my thoughts on them? I don't know what thoughts with regard to what particular beliefs are you addressing. If you could be more, if you could comment on that same question and add the detail, I can maybe respond. Marcus Aurelius, did Umar Ibn Khattab radiallahu marry underage girls, i.e. Ali ibn Abi Talib's daughter and Abu Bakr's daughter? No, he didn't marry underage girls because nobody really married underage girls. You know, this is a myth that is being unfortunately it's being spread by, I think, two people. One, the ridiculously naive yet committed a religious lot who think somehow this is somehow defending their faith, so they keep emphasizing this about the age of Aisha and things like this. That's number one. And the other is, I think, people who are using this kind of stuff to justify their own desires, or maybe to justify for certain people then, if not themselves. So this is ridiculous. Yes, the age in which people married may have varied, and that's true, but it would have always been a certain age. It would never have been like this 6-7-year-old girls and 8-year-old girls. Things like that people did not do. Generally speaking, I'm not saying, you know, you may find an incident in history, and it's not to say, oh, you know, people, but you'll find examples of anything. People have been cannibals, but it doesn't mean that people generally were cannibals. Okay, so that's my point. And I've gone through that in great detail in my video on the age of Aisha, where I explained that look, historically, there were certain cases when people at a young age, when they could not provide for their children, so they would just marry them off in the hope that the family of the groom would provide for them. And they would live there, but it wasn't a sexual relationship like that. And sometimes you see things like in places like India and even in Pakistan, I don't know if it's still going on, but they would sometimes do things like when children were born, they would just say, okay, I'm marrying him to this boy baby to that girl baby. Like we're marrying them. They're married now. And people did things like that. And sometimes they had princes married as just little kids. And they would do, but this was not a sexual kind. It wasn't like, you know, it wasn't from a sexual angle if they did things like that. First of all, the majority of the people did not do things like that, contrary to what's being pushed and peddled by certain people. And those that did, where these incidents did happen, this was generally the kind of context. So you see Imam Malik saying things like, speaking about these issues, but then he addresses that it would be forbidden for anybody to have any kind of sexual intercourse unless the girl was nubile. So this is how you have to have a holistic reading. Okay. Who's put the king's cup in the saddle of the Prophet? Binyamin put the possession of his wicked and mean brothers. Then his verse. Right, so okay, that's to do. Well, we'll come to Surah Yusuf in a moment. Hina says he's back. Alright, that's what we're talking about, people. Yeah, so people say, yes, it happened in the past, and look, these things were, you know, when people marry babies to each other and stuff, these are ignorant customs, but what I was trying to say is that they were not what was prevalent. I'm not saying they never happened, they did happen, but they were never the thing that everybody was doing this, or it was the norm. The other thing is they weren't from that sexual angle. They were from a kind of weird cultural angle to, let's just tie the knot so the families are now joined. And things like this. It was almost always like a lot of it was to do with things like that kind of familial bonding or the protection of that family or things like this. How can people be anthropomorphic in the 21st century? I totally agree. It's ridiculous to be anthropomorphic, to believe God has body parts. I think that's just dumb. If anybody believes that God has body parts in this day and age, and I understand in language we use this, in language it's fine, you know, to say, look, don't worry people, things are in the hands of God. That's fine, you know, to say, look, oh, you know, God watches over us, or to say things like, look, the hand of God is over us. This is expression, literary expression. This is part and parcel of being human. We will use things like this. But we don't literally believe in a particular, like say, okay, God must have body parts in it. And then the body parts they give God are so shocking because they give him body parts which are like, they don't even give him full body parts. They say like he has 2 right hands and he has like only 2 fingers and he has like 1 leg only and it's half a leg. He only has the bottom part of the leg and he has 1 foot. It's like, and then the sickos say, don't imagine it. And you're like, it's a bit late for that, mate. You're imagining this deformed thing, and they say it moves, and you're imagining it hopping, and they go, oh, but don't imagine it. And you're thinking, well, it's a bit late, mate. I can't not imagine it. They don't say 2 left feet. They just say he has 1 foot and 1. He only has the the calf downwards. They say he doesn't have the full leg. They say he has that leg, the lower leg, the shank. Right. So he has that, the shin part, and he has a back. I think they say, some of them say he has a back. Some of them say he doesn't have a back. He has a face. Just distorted. It's like, what the hell are you creating? Stop it, you're torturing us. Right, so right, so what else is going on? Let's look at some other questions. Marcus Aurelius, what's the big deal with eclipses being so bad from an Islamic perspective? They're not bad from an Islamic perspective. I feel that they're not bad at all from an Islamic perspective. You know, there is something to do with prayers, and I feel that that's kind of been a bit exaggerated in my understanding. Because even the prayer hadith to do with the eclipse seems so weird. I struggle to accept them. Yaar, mood nahi hai, yaar. I can't seem to get into the mood to accept it. You know, yaar, mood nahi ban raha hai. Imagine that's how you accepted hadith. You're just like, yeah, it's not the, not today, you know, tomorrow, come back tomorrow, this one. Come back again, huh? Come again. Right, so, yeah, so, and I'll tell you a very good hadith to do with eclipses is when there was a solar eclipse and the son of the Prophet had passed away. And the Prophet clearly said that, look, that people start to say, oh my God, this is an omen. This is an omen. And I tell you, you know, these things are they are a testimony to the character of the Prophet. Seriously, I think these things are what demonstrate the amazing truthfulness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's character. Because that was an amazing, an awesome opportunity to seize, to kind of like, to kind of capitalize on. Because everybody's saying, look, oh, look, this is a sign from God. And the Prophet could have just capitalized on it. He could have said, oh yes, see, like even the heavens are mourning and this and that. But yet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam just reminded people that, look, what are you, because they were already saying that. And he said, what are you talking about? That the celestial bodies are just signs or ayat of Allah. They are signs of God. They're nothing to do with me. And he said that they don't get eclipsed by the life or death. La bi maut wa la hayati ahad. You know, not the life or death of anybody. That let's just get on with the burial and the prayer, but let's not exaggerate. And I think that is an amazing in the humbleness of the Prophet when he reminded people at such a, you can just picture the awe-striking atmosphere of that event and the ease with which it could have been falsely hijacked. And yet the Prophet stood true. And it's these things that to me really kind of strike a chord. So So I mean that's a lesson to take about the eclipses. That the eclipses are not to do with solar eclipse, lunar eclipse. These are just normal signs of the natural world. Okay. Let's take another question. Do you have a question? Right. Okay. No. Right, there's a hadith. Marcus Aurelius has shared the hadith, which we're going to go into anyway, about the children. Yasser Kasana says, can you speak up on Jonathan Brown's latest controversy? Yar, what controversy? Why am I not being told about the controversies? Say that first. Right, so do you have a link? No. Yar, I need a link here. Controversies, you want to say that word first, controversy, and then we'll be like all ears. I'd phoned the when I was replacing the internet, the broadband, so I was supposed to have an engineer come round to fit in this new broadband, and he was supposed to do it in my office, and they chose not to come because they must have seen that I've got an old existing kind of wiring in this property. So they just sent me the equipment and left it. So I phoned in to complain for them to send it, and then they did send an engineer and fixed it. But the lady I ended up speaking to, oh my God, it was such a frustrating conversation, because the lady began by saying, oh, an engineer visited your property and then just decided to remotely set it up. And I said, look, stop lying. I said, there's no way the engineer came here. He's just lying, right? Because, let's have some transparency. Just be honest. Look, you recognize there was an existing system and you left it to that. Why the BS? Oh, he came to your door and then he decided to say, well, let's just do this. I know he didn't do that. I was home all day, right? So anyway, this conversation went back, forth. So she wanted to tell me that, okay, fine, we're going to send an engineer to fix it. So what she says is, all right, okay. She says, an engineer, we can arrange for an engineer, but this has a charge of £140 or £150, whatever it is. And I said, look, you guys sell me something, you do this, you tell me this is going to happen, you tell me, and you don't deliver, and you don't do this, and then there's more charges, and you don't tell me about the charges in the beginning. So here's me ranting back now. And then the lady says, well, oh, excuse me, she says, well, I was going to go on to say that, before you, we will now we will waive the charges. So I said to her, look, I said, is there a reason you're trying to build up some suspense? I said, is there a reason you're trying to do this dramatically? You can see, for God's sake, I'm obviously frustrated on the other end of the phone because you're not sending the engineer. The engineer hasn't come. So why not just say that, look, listen, I tell you what, we will fix this for you. We're going to get an engineer. And don't worry about any costs. There won't be any. Why not say it like that? Why are you saying that, look, by the way, we're going to send an engineer. This has a cost of this much, this much, this much. And then pause for emphatic, dramatic effect. And then I'm going to rant back. And then you're going to say, well, but I was going to build up the suspense. And then say, but we're going to knock it off for you. I mean, they're saying, I'm not here for a theatrical. Just fix the damn thing and tell me you'll fix it. This is the thing, unnecessary, when it just builds up the drama. So I need give me the solution. I need a solution. We do drama. That could be a hashtag for for this ummah. Hashtag we do drama. Right, so she thought you were cute. Shahib Hussain, you naughty, you teasing me. Right, so let's take some of the questions. Raouf Real Madrid says, greetings, Mufti Abu Layth. Big hello from Algeria. Raouf, mwah, much love right back at you. I love your videos. MashaAllah, you remind me of a sheikh who is awesome in our country now. Wow, okay. I'd like to know who the sheikh is. I try to understand. Can you tell us about more of the hadith of the Prophet of splitting the moon in half? If the hadith is authentic. Thank you so much. Much love from Algeria. Right back at you. Much love. Shukran. And may Allah forever keep you smiling. You see, it's good to read a good, pleasant message. You know, you read the normal, you kafir. You read the usual, you shaitan. This one, big shaitan, big shaitan. So, it's good to see once in a while something nice and pleasant. You know, the humanity exists. Right, so, yeah, you're making me dramatic. Right, so, Lard Pyar, somebody says Lard Pyar, of course. You want the lard too, you know, sometimes the lard of mercy. Right, so this hadith, by the way, I've covered this in much depth before. It is on YouTube, the splitting of the moon. I have explained that there is no, the moon was not split, okay. The verse of the Quran has nothing to do with that alleged phenomenon anyway. That's to do with, you know, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. It's to do with the end of the apocalypse, when everything comes to an end. And everything's kind of being, you know, torn to pieces and stuff like that. Now, the hadith that are transmitted, that several companions said they felt they saw the moon being split. This is their perception of events. Now, there is a narration from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu where he mentions kusif al-qamar, that there was actually a lunar eclipse, and that's what most likely may have happened. Ibn Ashur explains that in his tafsir. I've got a detailed explanation. I actually read through the whole thing on it, so you can check it out. It's in much more detail than what I'm saying now. Cool, hope that helps. Right, so what else, people, is going on? Shall we take one of those, let me check. Shall we take one of those serious discussion, serious discussion, to let people know that, you know, there's some knowledge here as well. What's the itne naadam bhi nahi hum ke bhatak ke reh jaएं. Allah, we're not that naive that we will just be left kind of stranded, as the poet says. Itne naadam bhi nahi hum ke bhatak kar reh jaएं. Koi manzil na sahi rah guzar rakhte hain. Allah, Allah. He says, even if we don't have a destination, we have a path that we stick to. And or is qadar tagaful bhi hame na barto sahib. हम भी अपनी दुआओं में कुछ असर रखते हैं. Allah, 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 Allah. He's speaking down. Whoa, what just happened there? Right, so he says that is qadar tagaful bi hame na barto sahib, that don't look down at us in this kind of condescending way. Sahib addresses him. Hum bhi kuch apni duaon mein asar rakhte hain. That we too have a way with our Lord. Like the Lord watches over us. And what the actual literal wording is that some of our du'as also have some effect to them. Hum bhi kuch apni duaon mein asar rakhte hain. Wah! Hashtag confidence. That's what, but he has a killer line in this poem where he says, Mar hi dale jo be mot, ye dunya wo hai. That which will kill you, bleed you dry through 1,000 cuts. Such is the nature of this world. Mar hi dale jo be mot, ye dunya wo hai. That's slipped my mind. He says, what was the... Oh, मार ही डाले जो बेमौत ये दुनिया वो है, हम जो जिंदा हैं तो जीने का हुनर रखते हैं. वाह 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 वाह. The fact that we are alive demonstrates that we have the skill to survive. That's what we're talking about, people. So, what else is going on? What else? Should we take some other... Should we take one of those questions? One of the topics that I've mentioned. How about we begin with this about the Hadith? I think that would be quite interesting. Right, okay, so people, there are 2 Hadith which we'll be taking a look at. Let's give an overview of this topic. This topic, from a broader perspective, looks at children who pass away. May Allah make wherever that happens, may Allah make it easy upon their families, Ameen, and grant them ease and replace their sorrows with joy, Ameen. But wherever children pass away, what is the theological standpoint, the stance towards this? Like, do people feel that all children they attain salvation? Or are some children doomed because their parents were non-Muslims? What is the thought about this? Now, this is the greater question. Now, and then there's a hadith in which some people come and ask the Prophet about their mother, who would bury certain children alive, certain girls alive, and she buried one of their sisters alive. And the Prophet allegedly says that not only is that woman the culprit doomed, but so is the child. Now this then triggers, it kind of unleashes a whole, not just a can of worms, but Pandora's box, people, because what on earth is going on here? Does this mean that children are doomed? And ain't children innocent? So what is this on about? So first of all, what is the ruling to this? So let's get that clear, and then we're going to zoom in to this discussion and look at this hadith. So just to be very clear, that children are always deemed innocent from a religious theological standpoint. I don't care what any certain scholars have said. For example, I'll come to that in a moment, but children are always deemed innocent. Okay. From an Islamic viewpoint, they will always have salvation. It does not matter whether they were Muslim, whether they were kafir, non-Muslim, whether they were whatever, from mushrik parents or whatever, there is always that innocence. Okay, this is reinforced on several occasions from the Quranic standpoint. You will see many verses of the Quran that will address things like that. For example, the verse "Kullama," when Allah speaks of damnation, wa kullama ulqiya fiha fawjun sa'alahum khazanatuha, that every time a group was doomed, they were asked, "Alam ya'tikum nadhir?" Were you not sent somebody to warn you? Qalu bala. They said, indeed. Ja'ana nadhir. That a warner came to us. That it was a necessary prerequisite for any kind of judgment. Okay. there's many verses like that. Allah taziru waziratum wizra ukhra, that no soul will carry the sin of another or the burden of another. And then Allah mentions about like children who were buried alive as an example, since we're speaking about children. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ, that when the girl that was buried alive will be asked, بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, with what crime was she murdered? The Quranic discourse is very clear to people who read it. Allah says, وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا, and we would not take a people to task unless they had had a messenger. So this is in line with the whole holistic reading of the Quran. Okay, so just to be very clear, and verses kullu mawludin yuladu ala al-fitra, I mean a hadith, the sunan teaching that all children are born upon a kind of natural constant. They have this kind of homeostasis, this default setting to them, if you like, a status, which means that they are not upon any faith, they are upon fitra. And some people translate this as every child is born a Muslim. That's not true. But every child is born on the state of fitra, on this natural disposition. So they cannot be taken to task. Okay, you would go against that. That's the clear understanding as I'm presenting it. There have been several scholars that have said this. Other scholars have disagreed. I'm not denying that, and I'll take a look at it in a moment. But I'm just being very clear from the get-go that this is what the ruling is, people. Anything that other people say, it is not gospel, it is not the Quran, and I will demonstrate that it is not even these hadith, do not stand any weight. Okay, so just because some scholars said it does not make it so. Okay, so just to be very clear about that. Right, so okay, right, now let's zoom back in to this hadith. Right, so there is a hadith that is transmitted in Abu Dawood. It has two narrations in Abu Dawood, and there is another similar hadith that supports this in the Musnad of Ahmad. Okay, so in Abu Dawood's riwayah, there is from Ibrahim ibn Musa al-Razi, from Yahya ibn Abi Za'idah, from his father Zakaria ibn Abi Za'idah, from Amir al-Sha'bi, the famous tabi'i, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So he's transmitting direct. Obviously now he never met the Prophet. However, Abu Dawood then follows that up with a chain from Yahya ibn Abi Zakaria, Yahya ibn Zakaria ibn Abi Za'idah. So the same person from the earlier chain who says that his father Zakaria ibn Abi Za'idah tells him that Abu Ishaq as-Sabi'i tells him that Amir al-Sha'bi told him that he was told by Alqamah, who was told by Ibn Mas'ud from the Prophet, that al-Wa'idah, the woman who buried alive a child, wal-Maw'uda, and the child that was buried alive, finnar, that both are in the fire, that both are doomed. Now, this hadith is not sahih. Okay, and I will go into that in just a moment. But let's take a look at the other narration, which is in the Musnad of Ahmad. It is also transmitted not in Sahih Bukhari, but Bukhari brings it in his book of narrators, in his Tarikh. He brings it there just to support something, but it's not in his Sahih. It's in the Musnad of Ahmad. And that is why it's transmitted from Muhammad ibn Abi Adi, from Dawood ibn Abi Hind, from Sha'bi once again, from Alqamah, from Salmat ibn Yazid. Now Salmat ibn Yazid says, I went with my brother. Now in some narrations we hear his brother's name was Qais. He says, I went with my brother and we approached the Prophet. And we said, Inna ummana Mulaika. So their mother, Salma, as some people have said, but her name is Mulaika. They tell the Prophet that she used to be a good woman, that she would, she would make sure that she, visited relatives and did this and did charitable acts and did these kind of things, what is her outcome? And the Prophet says that she is doomed. And apparently they knew who they were talking about. So this woman, that she had buried her child alive. So they then mentioned that, oh, she had buried our sister alive in Jahiliyyah. So what about the sister? So for example, they ask. And apparently in this hadith, the same thing, al-wa'idatu wal-maw'udatu fin-nar, that both of them are in the fire, illa an tudrik al-wa'ida al-Islam, unless the culprit reaches an age of Islam, not an age, but reaches Islam and embraces Islam. And then maybe God will forgive her. Now this hadith is not sahih either. Now I'm going to come back to that one. Let's go to the first one. Before I mention how this hadith is weak, just to remember that, look, people, whenever we see a hadith, the principle, the three golden rules, the golden principles, it cannot clash with the Quran. Okay, it cannot go against reason, and it cannot uproot an Islamic principle. So let's just take it. Reason. First of all, it's utterly unreasonable. How can you punish an innocent child? He was blameless. Okay, it goes against reason clearly. You know, ma lam yubayin al-ma'qul, the first principle. Second, lam yukhalif al-manqul, it cannot go against the Quran or the inherited tradition. The Quran, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ, when the buried alive girl is asked, with what crime was she killed? The Quran is clearly demonstrating the innocence of the child. Right, and all the other verses as well, some of which we've cited already. The principle in Islam, which falls under istishab wal-hal as an asl, or al-bara'at al-asliyah, that a person is always innocent and they cannot be liable until either proven guilty, or a child has bara'at al-asliyah until they reach puberty or they become of age. Okay, so that's an Islamic principle. Now it clashes with all three. Okay, this hadith is utterly unacceptable. But now let's take a look at the chain in this. Now Yahya ibn Abi Za'idah, first of all, he is somebody who passes away in 182 Hijri, who transmits the first Abu Dawood narration, and he's one of the first people to actually author in hadith in Kufa. Now a lot of people say he's very trustworthy and things like this, and but Abu Zur'a al-Razi says something interesting about him. He says he's a great person, very reliable. However, he says he hardly made a mistake. قَلَّمَا يُخْطِئ. But فَإِذَا أَخْطَأ, if he did make a mistake, أَتَى بِالْعَظَائِمِ, he made catastrophic mistakes. If he did make an error, it was a cataclysmic one. So that's something to remember. The next transmitter, the next one we're going to look at is Zakaria ibn Abi Za'idah. Now, first of all, people are just okay about him. Like Abu Hatim says, he's Layyin al-Hadith. He would purposely kind of blag certain chains, drop people, do tadlis. Ibn Ma'in says he's okay, swaylih. That means, it's just about... Abu Zur'a says he was yudallisu kathiran. He would blag a lot, especially when transmitting from Sha'bi. And who does this come from? Sha'bi. Okay. Sha'bi himself, although he's a great tabi'i, somebody who passes away in 103 Hijri, however, there's so many narrations he would do, but he'd never ever heard from the people. He would transmit from many Sahaba. Like he transmits from Aisha, Ibn Mas'ud, Usama ibn Zayd, Ali, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Zayd ibn Thabit. And all of these companions, despite having seen them, he never actually heard from them. Or Ibn Umar, he transmits from these people, but he never actually ever saw them. And in that chain, the missing person, As-Sabi'i, Abu Ishaq As-Sabi'i, is somebody who's well known to do tadlis. Dhahabi also mentions that at a later age his memory messed up. Ibn Hajar mentions that he had dementia. اختلط بأخرى, that he caught dementia at a later age in life. So this is the chain that such a narration and such audacity is based on something as weak as a spider's web, people. And let's take a look at the other chain. The other chain, first of all, Muhammad ibn Abi Adi, who Abu Hatim in the Mizan says la yuhtajju bi, you can't even use him as an evidence. Then who's transmitting from Dawood ibn Abi Hind, who Bukhari, by the way, avoided altogether, and who Mazzi says used to mix things up massively. Kana kathir al-ittirab wal-khilaf. Al-Athram, the student of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, says kana kathir al-ittirab wal-khilaf. And Ibn Hajar says at a later age he would make mistakes. Kana Jahm. Right, now, okay, what are some more interesting things about this hadith? First of all, Ibn Wazir, the great Muhaddith, says this hadith is da'if. We cannot accept it, people. Not accept it. He also, what's also interesting is Abu Bakr al-Bazzar in his Bahr al-Zakhar mentions this hadith, هذا الحديث لا نعلم أحدا جوده إلا ابن أبي زائدة. It's only Ibn Abi Zaidah, he claims, who only, said this, basically kind of winged this hadith. But that's a claim from Bazzar, put that aside. Ibn al-Wazir has an interesting discussion on this. He claims that not only is this chain utterly unacceptable for the people in it, he brings to our attention a fascinating point here, people. Ibn al-Jawzi had mentioned whilst commenting on this hadith that Ibn Sa'ad in the Tabaqat highlights that these two brothers, Salmat ibn Yazid and his brother Qais, had actually, Ibn Sa'ad in his Tabaqat brings that they had renounced Islam. They weren't Muslim. They had apostated from Islam. Now, and this, when they came to the Prophet, they were most likely apostates. This thing that Ibn al-Jawzi says maybe they returned to Islam, we don't know. Ibn al-Wazir says you can't just make a claim they became Muslim unless you have clear evidence that they became Muslim. But we do know from Ibn Sa'ad's transmission that they had left Islam. They had apostated, which is a fascinating discussion in and of itself because it shows the Prophet did not call to their execution. Right, so that's an interesting discussion to show that kind of angle. Nevertheless, coming back to this discussion, it clearly shows that look at what this chain is based on. So allegedly the two people are apostates who don't, as Ibn Sa'ad highlights, they don't actually, they're not even Muslim people who not only, it's not that they weren't Muslim, but they'd rejected Islam after having embraced it. From them, you've got the likes of Dawood ibn Abi Hind, who's rejected by many people. He's weakened. I mentioned here that he used to mess things up. He was kathir al-ittirab. Bukhari avoided him. Then you've got Muhammad ibn Abi Adi, who also Abu Hatim says la yuhtajju bih, okay, in his Mizan. So this is what this is resting on. Another spider's web. It's a cobweb. There's nothing to it. It has no solid ground on which it's based. And hence Ibn al-Wazir, the great Muhaddith, says that, look, la yathbut, this hadith in and of, he says, I sought every chain in an attempt to maybe see, can this hadith stand up? And every chain I looked at collapsed. And that was the wording of Ibn al-Wazir. So these hadith, people, are utterly unacceptable. Okay. Now, what about this ruling of the children of the mushrikeen, children of disbelievers? Now, there's a bunch of opinions that the scholars have come up with. Ibn Hajar brings up to about 10 opinions. Ibn al-Qayyim brings about 8 in his Ahkam, Ahl Dhimma. The point is that, look, scholars have come up with all kinds of stuff. Yeah, some of them have said, what it is God will test them on the Day of Judgment. So they have, this is like what Ibn Taymiyyah and people end up, and I think Ibn doesn't. But this is that understanding that, oh, God will test them. You've got that understanding. You've got some people saying God would already know what they would have. So they are in the kind of pre-eternal knowledge of God. So God knows that hypothetically, had they grown up, they would have been good or bad, and according to that hypothetical knowledge, they would have been judged. That's an opinion. One opinion some scholars came up with, oh, they will be the people of the A'raf, that they will forever remain in a limbo state, in this kind of limbo state, and then God will, just determine what to do with them. Some people said God will just decide arbitrarily on the day. Fi mashi'atillah, it's up to God. Some people said they will be in heaven serving people in paradise. They will be the servants in heaven. All of these opinions, they may be based on certain interpretations. Okay, I'm not saying they're not based on some interpretations. Some people said they will be in hell. And I think even Ibn Hazm may have kind of inclined to that, saying because they will be with their fathers, with their own parents and so on. And then there were scholars who said they will just be in paradise. Or they will have salvation, just categorically and unconditionally. And that is, people, the simple answer. All these kind of 9 other opinions that you've got, it's people just using their brain on overtime. It's nonsensical. But people have said it, I'm not going to deny. People have said those kind of opinions. You're going to have some people just did tawaqquf. One of the opinions was, oh, we don't know, it's up to God. And people like Abdullah ibn Mubarak, Hamad ibn Zayd, Hamad ibn Salma, Ishaq ibn Rahaway, all these kind of people were like that. Even Ibn Abdul Barr kind of went that way. Yet when Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was asked that what about the children of the mushrikeen, he said, هَذَا لَا يَخْتَلِفُ فِيهِ أَحَدٍ. He said there is no disagreement amongst anyone that they are fil Jannah, they are in paradise, that they have salvation. And that is the clear understanding, people. You will have some people, like I said, who said they will be doomed, and they were mainly the Azariqa from the Khawarij. They were a group of that extreme sect I spoke about earlier on when I was asked about the ruling of only the laws of God, that strict adherence, that you can't make up any laws unless they're clearly stated in the Quran, etc. That group, the Khawarij, they had a bunch of them were known as the Azariqa. They had this thing that children, it doesn't matter if they're from the kuffar, they are doomed. And some Hanbalis, because some Hanbalis were also very they had a harsh kind of persona and personality to them, went that way. But Imam Ahmad himself was very clear that they have salvation. People like Ibn Taymiyyah, they went to this thing that God would test them in the afterlife. To me that makes no sense, because in the afterlife is not an abode to be tested. And then that's not fair. Why not retest the other people? And I know they will say, well, God doesn't have to be fair, but to me that does not then make any sense. And the deen is a deen of sense. It is a deen of reason. Okay, so I hope that makes some sense. I wanted to wrap that up. That look, these 2 hadith, the one in Abu Dawood and the one in Musnad of Ahmad of Al-Wa'ida wal-Ma'udatu fi an-Nar, are nonsensical. They are false hadith. They rest on just utterly weak. They just rest on rubble. There is no foundations. Simply cobwebs. وَإِنَّ أَوْهَنَ الْبُيُوتِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ لَبَيْتُ الْأَنْكَبُوتِ. You see, the cobwebs are the weakest of foundations, people. And when you look at the Quran and Sunnah and the authentic ahadith, and you look, or the Sunnah that is transmitted, the Islamic principles of innocence, of no liability until a certain age, it's very clear that children are always of salvation. Cool. That wraps that discussion up. So let's take some questions now. Let's take some... Ibn Taymiyyah also said everybody goes to paradise. No, Ibn Taymiyyah actually didn't. Ibn Taymiyyah said that they would be tested. He felt that would happen on the day they would be tested. And I find that absurd. It just doesn't add up. Right, cool. What else is going on, people? What else? Let's take some questions. Let's... Yeah, what's this? Oh. I'm looking at my own Facebook and thinking, what on earth is that? Right, let's do a bit of rapid round. A bit of rapid round, people. Let me have a little drink. Some rapid round. What's bothering the people? Alright, what's going on in this world? What if this world is but just a simulation, people? Could be. It could be. I mean, in a divine way, it could be like a simulation. That this, إنما الحياة الدنيا لعب وله. It's just a game. It's a simulation. And Anisa mentioned that, when a mother loses the baby, miscarries, the baby will lead the mother to paradise. Exactly. I mean, that's my point, that the Islamic principles demonstrate that. Jody says, if there is a possibility, let's do, oh bloody hell, these are goddamn shit. Oh no. Alright, if there is a possibility of a bad mother, how should one's child react to that parent? And what are the child's responsibilities then? I'm not sure I fully understand that question. If there's a bad parent, how should the child react? I'm not sure I fully as in, if a parent is being abusive to a child, what should the child do? To be honest, I don't think the child would know what to do if it's a young child. I mean, I suppose if it's of some age and maturity, then maybe. And it all depends on what that means. I mean, that could mean anything to nothing. I mean, to something quite small, to something huge, and I don't know what that means, but the child would need to get some kind of help. Can the devils and angels turn into humans like in the show Lucifer? And then you find out all this while that this whole while that I'm just a devil. You're like, oh, that explains now. That explains. Punishment for magic is that the punishment is stupidity. The punishment is naivety and stupidity, and the fact that you live in this weird world where you think magic actually happens. That is the punishment, I guess. It's not much more. Oh, Jody has asked, if a mother is bad, is heaven still at her feet? Right, I think, no. Right, okay, you see, things like serving your parents are generic advice. Obviously, in some cases, some parents may be incredibly sick and twisted. And, they may be ruthless, cold, torturing people. I remember years ago, I watched this thing on the news in the UK. There was this mother that would torture her toddler, her own toddler. I can't remember whether it was a boy or a girl now, but it was a toddler, and her and her boyfriend, and they eventually killed the child. But there was some CCTV footage that was at the time on the news where the child was kind of walking along. It could just about walk, and one of them, I think the boyfriend or her, they trip over the child, like they stick their foot in front and the toddler falls. And then they stamp their feet on this, they're kind of sitting on a sofa or something. They stamp down on this child, and it was horrific to watch. You're like, what the is... Like, That's just another level of coldness. And I mean, and then I don't know, I don't think it was that incident, but through another incident, they killed a child then. So, people like that, obviously, there's no paradise at their feet. People like that are just stone cold, ruthless animals, savages, that's what they are. So no, these kind of hadith wouldn't be referring to people like that, obviously. These are just generic hadith that but that said, what I would say is that, look, if your parents did bad to you as a child, let's say like they not that bad, but they treated you harshly, beat you up, things like that. But now they're not like that. Obviously, I mean, one is that they can't beat you up anyway now that you're much older, but let's just say now they have kind of changed. I would say, look, try to... I know it may be very difficult, but I would say, look, try to not kind of delve into the past and just focus on the present. Because, you know, it's strange, it's weird, but a lot of people, when they do these things, they can't actually remember that they did these things. I know that's going to sound, to somebody that's been through it, they're going to think, what on earth are you on about? But you'll realize that if you ever have a discussion with those people that, oh my God, you used to do this and you used to do that, they can't remember it. Like, their picture of themselves is actually quite a benign picture. Like, they think, yeah, I might have occasionally kind of just, you know, raised my hand, but nothing really. They would actually think they were quite beneficent. As strange as that sounds. I mean, you know, if you were like a Pakistani growing up here in the 80s, your parents most likely put you through some military grade training. They beat the hell out of us growing up. I mean, beating the hell out of you is an understatement. They said, pain threshold. We'll show you pain threshold. They reintroduced, they recalibrated our entire system. So, but shockingly, they wouldn't remember any of this now. You know, they would just think, what are you talking about? Nothing like that ever. It's all in your mind, goddammit. It's a simulation. So I would say, look, if it's things like this, I would say, try not to hold it against them and just move on with how it is now. But some things are very different, like those examples where I said where there was just this utter cruel, this attempt. I don't know. So I think it is difficult for people. It is a personal call. If they can forgive, forgiveness is always a much greater and admirable kind of quality. Cool. Let's see, what other questions? Oh. Whoa. It helped me, my father remembers. It helped me. If moral... Why care about them? If morals reflect day and age, why care about them? What a dumb question. I need to see who that is. Trevosky Zandar is saying, if morals change, why care about your parents? What a stone-hearted thing to say. Well, tell us, Trevonsky, what's his name? Trevosky. Tell us, Trevosky, are you speaking from an old age? Like, are you watching this from an old retired people's home? Right, this, have your children just dumped you? Is that what's going on? That's it. Right, this one not nice, my friend. You, of course you want. I think your duty always. The question. Sorry, he's missed us. Sorry. See, this is where timing is totally wrong. You see, I'm speaking about parents, and he says, well, if the morals change, then why? But he wants to just ask about the morals. Then why care about them? The antecedent to them is going back to morals, not to parents. Ah, this one confusing, you know. Who? You? You is blind? No, you is deaf. I am you. This is like that Jackie Chan confusion. What about the compilation of the wall of Yajuj and Majuj? Right, this Yajuj and Majuj, people, this is completely mixed up. And I know Yasir Qadi, I was sent this link. I'll actually watch the whole clip. I was sent this other link to watch this whole clip of... look at this. It's like I'm giving a sermon here. People, get into my preaching mode. Oh yeah. So, this Yajuj Majuj fascination, this apocalyptic fascination is just, it's too overrated. Somebody asked me a question. This is an interesting one. What Travosky's saying, what about anus? Huh? Okay. Things got awkwardly weird all of a sudden. I don't know. What is it? What's going on here? Is there something? Oh, he's trying to say answer. He said ants, and it appeared like a cha-cha-cha-cha. I thought, what kind of a proposition is this? I've heard about sacrificing things to the sheikh. But to say I sacrifice my anus, that's a sacrifice unwanted. Be like, okay, so what do I do with this? Is anybody for the taking? Anybody for the taking? Can I sublet it out? Can I at least make a bit of money out of this situation? Can I capitalize on the situation? Well, you know, one not, waste not, you know what the... well, so, God. Right, so I was asked a question about... aliens. If there are aliens, would they be following their own kind of Islam? Would they have their own faith and religion and things like this? And Daniel said, eBay that. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Get it up on your Insta story. Can we get like a HD photo of it? Just send it right here. Can somebody... Is there eBay in Afghanistan? There'll be a market. Can I... Let's overtake that market. That's what we're talking about. In Area 51. Right, okay, guys, let's focus. Focus this one. Right, so, you know, that's like the doctor meme where the doctor says Mercury is in Uranus, and the guy says, doctor, I'm not really into that astrology stuff. Obviously the patient looks up, he says, doctor, I'm not really into that astrology stuff. Doctor says, well, neither am I, it's just that my thermometer's broken. My thermometer just broke, I was just letting you know. Oh, well, people, that's what's going on. That's what's up. So, well, let's focus, people, focus. Right, so if there are aliens, people out there, that's an interesting thought though. Look at this world. So, one man's rubbish is another man's treasure. Well, I can't say I'm tempted really at all. I don't really, Daniel, Daniel, I can't say I swing that way. You know, we might say, well, people, you know, leave gay people alone, give them their rights and things like this, but we can't really, You know, for gay rights, really, you know who they should have as the key, the face of the activists? Face of the activists should always be lesbians, don't you think so? That's like you know, because they would just have all men's support straight away. Like, all men would just be like, They'd be joining the marches. Like, yeah. I mean, have you ever known a man to hate on lesbians? Like, that's like never happened, ever. That just could not, if that happened, you know, that person is an avatar of the devil. That is the devil himself. No man could ever hate on that. So it'd just be like, oh, men would just be like, oh. So this is who they should have as their lead activists. They'd just get support from everybody. But hey, who's going to listen to me and my advice, huh? Well, so I need to tame some of my jokes sometimes. You know, sometimes I want to make my proper jokes, but I can't. I'm too held back here. Right, so yeah, coming back to aliens. The aliens invade and the aliens are all gay. Imagine that. The aliens are like, hey, we're here, what's up? People are like, what? What? They're like, yeah, we're advanced species, you know, hey. That would be like a proper mind twist. Would be like, what? There's aliens, and they're gay aliens. Okay. So, no, but let's, coming back to aliens. Alright. Francisco said he's a lesbian. Yeah, hell yeah. Oh, I'll be a lesbian as well. What the hell? Lesbian and all men share a common principle. That we all love women. Oh, sorry, all straight men. This is why I'm saying there's a great unity between us. Right, so, yeah, let's focus, people. Focus. Right, so, yeah, this great, look, the vastness of the cosmos out there. When we think about it, there must be some life out there somewhere. You think about it, it's so vast. And if there is, would they have their own kind of understanding of God and so on? I'm assuming they would just have their own understanding and their own kind of communication with God. That's what I'm understanding. Hell yeah. Cato Lumiere, alright. Cato, I see Cato makes these kind of toys and there's a huge market for it apparently. But I see them. Very artistically made, Cato. I see them and they're like toys and they've got a huge adult following. You know what's weird is the other day I saw this news report. I mean this kind of report where there's this following, like a cult following. It's not a religious cult, but it could be, but it's not. Of where these people, they love to dress as animals. Like mainly, I think, cats and dogs. But they have these large kind of outfits made of like kind of dogs and they kind of, I mean, it's not just like a random fetish, but it's like a fetish that they've been subsumed by. Their whole life is subsumed by. Like they have these gatherings. They go meet up at conventions, and they live that life. Like they love it. They love kind of like the whole thing is dressing up in these paws, and they have these big, and they go out, and they're kind of like mascots, their uniforms, massive uniform. And I watched this thing on Twitter, somebody had sent me a link, and one of them presumably, had his own hands amputated, as in premeditated, because he stuck them into dry ice for something like 6 hours, and then they had to be amputated, and he was gonna get now some, like a prosthetic claws. So paws and claws, whatever. Not claws, paws. So like dog paws. I just couldn't believe and he seemed so chuffed about his hands being amputated. He was like, oh yeah. But then he was going back and forth and saying, well, oh no, I just fell asleep and my hands were in the dry ice for 6 hours. But I was just like, wow, what has the world come to, people? Honestly, I don't get. I mean, if it's a little game, I could get it, but I just honestly don't. Hell, even if it's a little fetish, you could fathom. You could fathom it. I'm not saying you don't do it, but you could fathom. But this is a lifestyle choice. These bechare live like that. Yeah, it's strange, man. I watched this one documentary with this lady once, an American lady, and she's moving about everywhere in a wheelchair, and she gets up from her bed like in a wheelchair, like she'll literally like kind of raise herself onto a chair, strap herself in. She does everything in the kitchen, cooks food, does everything on a wheelchair, goes out. But she can actually walk. She can walk just fine. And it's her dream to become a paraplegic person, to become paralyzed. That's her dream, her ambition. And I'm not making this stuff up. I wish I was. She has contacted several doctors. There's a documentary on her, people. She's contacted several doctors in South America to say, will you conduct an operation on me and sever my spine so I become paralyzed? And then what? And most of them, thank God, have said, are you out of your mind? And one of the hospitals said, okay. Hail capitalism. It's like, so they said, okay, but it's going to cost you $30,000. Or I think 25 or 30. I think it was $30,000. So she was saving up. Saving up not to buy a Range Rover, people. She's saving up to become disabled so she can ride around in a wheelchair, which she already does. But I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. Honestly, you could Google this stuff. Sometimes I was like, oh my God, like, I don't get. In some ways, I'd love to actually have a conversation with this person and say, what on earth is going on inside your mind? Like, I don't get what's going on. Like, there's some... But they're not insane. They're not mentally or clinically insane. They're normal people, as in mentally fine. Ya salam, people. Ya salam. In Arabic, there's a saying, al-junoon funun. Junoon funun. That craziness, that insanity has its artistic manifestations, people. Right. What's this necklace from? Yeah, this is from The Punisher. Alright. Because I'm to punish all the insane opinions out there. That's what it is. Do girls even fall in love? Oh, Trivosky. Blessed are the naive. Oh yes, they fall in love. So do guys fall in love, of course. Of course people fall in love. But you see, actually it's interesting. Let me tell you, psychologically, our fellow Trivosky over here hasn't had a girl fall in love with him. Hi. Mardala. इश्क ने गालिब निकम्मा कर दिया, वरना तुम भी आदमी थे काम के. Allah, Allah, Allah. Ghalib, this ishq, this love has made you useless. Otherwise, you too had great potential. That's Trotsky saying, even though I look handsome though. Trotsky, shall we set you up right here? Send a photo. We're gonna set you up right here. Right, Trotsky, going. Yep. Send a photo. We're gonna rate you all first. We're gonna all rate you out of 10. And then we're gonna have to make it a sale for, obviously it's going to a good cause. To listen, the positive side is it's going to a good cause. It's going to me. So the money, it's going to a great cause. I'll let you know that it will bring great happiness to my luxurious adventures. Right, going. Yep, God, sold to the niqabi in the back. There you go. Well, it'll be a little surprise. So, yeah, I was going to actually say about this falling in love thing. It's interesting in psychology. It goes, there's been a lot of research done on love. And research seems to demonstrate that men actually, when they fall in love, do so romantically. And women, like men, do so emotionally more often. Not always, but more often. And women do so rationally. Check that out, people. That doesn't mean everyone, but more so, generally speaking, that women, psychological research has shown that when, it's like the plane wants to just land right here, that when they do fall in love, they do so rationally. Like they calculate it and think about it, and men just fall face first emotionally. This is when they do, of course. And that's what psychological research seems to show. So Trotsky, my dear friend, soon, I'm sure it will. Can we get it to? It will happen. It will come. Billy said, no, and this is interesting. You know why this is interesting? Because there's the general stereotype that women are generally emotional, more emotional than men, and men. It's a stereotype that men are more rational than women, and this is the kind of stereotype that pervades in society, and whatever the background research to it. But I would definitely agree that women are more in touch with their emotions than men. Now, however, when it comes to this romance thing, women do so detached from their emotion. Like they do emotionally get involved, but they will, before getting involved, research shows that before they kind of allow themselves to free fall in love, there's a lot of reasoning behind it. But with men, they'll just like, a lot of the time crazily, like they'll just stupidly fall in love. So, as I'm sure a few of the men on here, some of their adventures from the past will tell. Billy, I'm sure you're watching. Yeah. So there you go. So that's an interesting thing. So next time when people say these stereotypes, you've got that too. For what reasons, though? For what reasons? For reasons, my friend, that you will not quite fathom. For reasons that only a few have mastered. Don't worry. You need to humble yourself and we will teach you. Say, teach me, sensei. And we will say, humble yourself. Right, so are we allowed to fall in love, though? Of course. These things, you see, religion seems to take a very, like a kind of dictatorial stance. Almost a very controlling stance. But in essence, Islam isn't like that. These things, there's nothing to say that Islam, it isn't saying, hey, people go out there, fall in love and things like that. It's not saying that, but it's not condemning these things either. So these things are absolutely fine. They're not to be condemned. I tell you what, let's take, speaking of love and people who did fall in love, that takes us to the iconic mention of Yusuf alayhi salam and Zulaykha. So let's quickly take a look at that if we can, right? Because I did say, and then we'll, right. Now that's, whether her name was Zulaykha or not, obviously is, we don't truly know, but this is just how it's transmitted often. So we all know the story of Joseph, of Yusuf alayhi salam. But, right, so what is this incident? So somebody told me that, look, it appears that Yusuf alayhi salam was punished by God, or taught a lesson by God, and made to suffer longer in prison. So I thought, well, what is he talking about? And so this was the verse, and this is the kind of understanding. Okay, so we'll just go to this. So the verse begins with when Yusuf alayhi salam is sent to prison. And that begins in verse 36. It mentions وَدَخَلَ مَعَهُ السِّجْنَ فَتَيَانِ. So two young men end up in prison with him. قَالَ أَحَدُهُمَا إِنِّي أَرَانِي أَعْصِرُ خَمْرًا. So one of them said, I see myself. Now this is understood to be in a dream, or as a vision, either a vision or a dream. He said, I see myself squeezing wine, kind of preparing wine. وقال الآخر إني أراني أحمل فوق رأسي خبزا تأكل الطير منه. The other said, I see myself carrying bread on my head, like I've got bread, and the birds seem to be eating away from that bread. نبئنا بتأويله إنا نراك من المحسنين. So they're not quite sure who Yusuf alayhi salam is, but they see this kind of this aura from him, this, not a divine aura, but a divinely inspired aura from him. They feel this from his presence. They say, we see you from somebody who does ihsan, somebody who has this graciousness to them. So he interprets their vision or their dream for them. قال لا يأتيكما طعام ترزقانه إلا نبأتكما بتأويله. But before he does, as the Prophet of God, he uses the opportunity to invite them to reconnect with God. So in this verse he mentions to them that, look, I will tell you, he says, I'm going to tell you before you even get anything to eat, meaning it's going to happen very soon, but just bear with me. He says that, look, and that is a gift from what God has given me. But he makes a statement, إِنِّي تَرَكْتُ مِلَّةَ قَوْمٍ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. I abandoned the path of a people who reject God. I abandoned that path. And he mentions that they are disbelievers and so on, and I follow the path of my forefathers, Ibrahim wa Ishaq wa Yaqub, and we do not ascribe partners unto God. مَا كَانَ لَنَا نُشْرِكَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. And then he goes on to say that that is from the grace of his Lord. ذَلِكَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا وَعَلَى النَّاسِ. He says that is from the grace of God upon us. But you see, if he just said it like that, it seems like, yeah, well, that's for you, but what is God doing for us? He says, وَعَلَى النَّاسِ, and upon people. وَلَكِنْ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. It's just that most people are ungrateful. Ya صَاحِبَيَ السِّجْنِ. He says, my two companions, he says, hey, people, guys, tell me, is it better to worship many gods or one God? That what do you actually worship? See, so he uses this opportunity to kind of remind them of their connection to God. He says, these are just names, asma'un sammaytumuha antum wa aba'ukum. Allah never revealed any, he never told you about them, you've come up with them. And this is where that famous verse which I quoted earlier today when the guy asked, Inil hukmu illa lillah, that truly judgment belongs to God. And this is a verse that is often misquoted and used to just justify extreme brutality in the name of religion. Now, he then goes on to interpret their vision. He says, Ya sahibi as-sijn, amma ahadukuma fayasqi rabbahu khamra. He says, one of you will go on to serve his Lord. Now here, Lord did not mean God. It just meant like his king. And that's how people use it. So in Arabic, they do say arbab. So for example, people, intelligent people are called arbab al-uqul, the lords of intellect. This doesn't mean lord like, because in English we don't use, like the way we say in England, like you've got the House of Lords. And we use the word lord in a different context. You know, you've got this lord so-and-so, lord so-and-so, as a kind of prestigious, the kind of peership that they have, the lordship. So people, and they would call a woman Rabbatul Bayt, the Lord, female version of Lord, right, of the home. Rabbatul Bayt, somebody who would take care of the home. So he says that this person will give his Lord to drink. He will give his king to drink, his Rabb to drink. وَأَمَّا الْآخَرْ فَيُسْلَبْ. And he has bad news for one of them. He says, as to the other, he will be crucified. فَتَأْكُلُ الطَّيْرُ مِنْ رَأْسِهِ. And the birds, like the vultures, will eat from him. قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ الَّذِي فِيهِ تَسْتَفْتِيَانِ. Now, he says that, and such has the matter been decreed. Now, the interesting, I was asked that, is this a test that these two people said to him? There's nothing in the Quran that says that they made that up. Now, some people have said, oh, by the way, they made that up to test him. And because he said it, God decreed it accordingly. There's nothing like that in the Quran. That is just they are making up that narrative. That's not in the Quran. In the Quran, they actually say that we saw this vision. Or it could have been a vision or a dream. They just say we saw, like I saw that this was happening. Now, we're not quite sure how they saw that, whether it was a dream or a vision, but then it goes on to say that Yusuf alayhi salam says, وَقَالَ لِلَّذِي ظَنَّ أَنَّهُ نَاجٍ مِّنْهُمَا. So the one that he assumed was going to be successful. Some people made a big deal here. Dhanna meant, because it means to assume, but they say, oh, it meant he was certain, and so on, so on. It's no big deal really, but they made it into a big deal, some scholars. He says, اذكرني عند ربك. Now this is important. It says, remember me, or mention me, or remember me when you're with your Rabb. And Rabb here meant your king. You're kind of that Lord, not like Lord as in. So when you're with him, like put in a good word for me with your Rabb. Now, and then the same verse says, فَأَنْسَاهُ الشَّيْطَانُ ذِكْرَ رَبِّهِ. And the shaitan made him forget the dhikr, the remembrance or the mentioning of his Lord. فَلَبِثَ فِي السِّجْنِ بِضْعَ سِنِينَ. So Yusuf alayhi salam remained in prison for a few years. Now some people have interpreted this to mean that Yusuf alayhi salam, when he said to him, mention me with your Lord, or put in a good word, he forgot to, he forgot to remember Allah. He told this guy, like he ought to be depending on God, and rather he depended on this guy. And as a consequence, Allah made him stay in prison a few years longer. So just to clarify that once again, what some people have understood from this is when he says, "Uzkurni inda rabbik," mention me with your Lord, or do my dhikr with your Lord, and Lord here meaning like king or ruler. فَأَنْسَاهُ الشَّيْطَانِ. Then shaitan made him forget, right, the dhikr of his Lord. So here, these people are trying to say that, oh, maybe what this means is the shaitan made Yusuf alayhi salam forget about Allah. Like he forgot to say, oh yeah, to seek help from Allah, and he sought help from this person, and as a consequence he remained in prison. That is a very poor translation of that. Very poor translation and interpretation in my understanding. Very poor. It's absolutely inaccurate in my understanding. Here the antecedent is not, antecedent is the thing that a pronoun goes back to. So if I said, this cup, place it over there, then the antecedent is the cup. Or Yusuf, he said he is going back to the antecedent being Yusuf alayhi salam. So this the antecedent for the pronoun made him forget is the person that was going to be saved. Because it says the one that he assumed would be successful, Yusuf alayhi salam told him, mention me to your Lord. And the shaitan made him forget this mentioning, as in he forgot. And that makes sense. Not only was this interpretation favoured by many scholars, it was what Abu Hayyan, for example, mentions in his tafsir. He goes with it. As-Suyuti goes with it in his tafsir. Shawkani seems to kind of go that way. You've got Ibn Ashur. He does mention both of them, but he seems to be going with this interpretation. You've got Al-Iji mentions it in his Jami' al-Bayan. And he says that he mentions it first as the first interpretation. The antecedent is the Sharabi. They mention him as the Sharabi, is the one who's going to pour the alcohol for the serve. He's going to serve his king. It's what Mawardi mentions as the first interpretation. It's what Baydawi mentions as the first interpretation. And it's the one that makes sense. Why? Because look, if Allah is speaking and Allah is saying, oh, and the shaitan made Yusuf forget about his Lord, why not say made him forget about us? Made him forget about me, God. Why his Lord? Why is Allah speaking in such a strange dynamic? It does not flow. So it seems to be very clear that this is very clear that the person forgot to mention him to the king. And what else supports that is, if you keep on reading, the king then has a dream many years later about the cows, and he saw 7 skinny cows and so on, and they kind of he sees 7 fat cows being eaten up by these 7 skinny kind of cows and so on. But then what does it mention? This servant is there with the king. وَقَالَ الَّذِي نَجَا مِنْهُمَا, and this is verse 45, that the one who had been saved says, وَذَّكَرَ بَعْدَ أُمَّةٍ, and he now remembered after ages. Oh, أَنَا أُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِتَأْوِيلِهِ, I will tell you its interpretation. Let me go back to Joseph. So he remembered after many years because the shaitan had made him forget. فَأَنْسَاهُ الشَّيْطَانُ ذِكْرَ رَبِّهِ. The shaitan had made him forget for many years. So that's what it is. It's not that Yusuf alayhi salam forgot to ask God instead of him, and therefore, as a consequence, as a punishment, remained in prison for many years. That just makes God seem very, tyrannical. It makes him seem very kind of almost childish and reactionary, and it does not befit the majesty of God. So, and that's a wrong interpretation. It does not even flow. But it is true, yes, it is true that, look, because there is a kind of context where some Muslims have used that, some preachers, because they want to preach to people that, oh, if you don't say things like this, God will punish you. So they use these stories, they utilize these stories to aid that kind of an approach. See, look, God even punished the prophets suffered if they didn't say this. So it ties into their kind of preaching narrative. So they utilize these stories and optimize and capitalize on them. But they are baseless, really, and they're very poor translations of the actual verses, and the verse does not even flow like that. So I hope that clarified that. We shouldn't really think low of the prophets, and we definitely shouldn't think low of God, that God would punish his own prophets or allow them to suffer just because they forgot, which makes no sense whatsoever. Okay. Somebody said, what is meant by shaitan here? فَأَنْسَاهُ الشَّيْطَانُ ذِكْرَ رَبِّهِ. This was to show that, look, shaitan here was to show that it wasn't, see, when a person forgot, you see, how did he, was it just carelessness? Was it that he wasn't paying attention? Was it that, And it was to show that it was just like, but if you want to use the term, just waiting for that to pass. If you want to use the term like forces at play, like we have forces that sometimes, they are counterproductive at play. So the shaitan here making him forget. Why did the shaitan make the servant of the king forget this? Why not just say he forgot? Why blame it on the shaitan? Because in a way to show that the person himself was a grateful person. It wasn't that, you see, because if we say, oh, he forgot, the picture that's being drawn is that, oh, this person was just quite ungrateful, really. Oh, he just forgot. He didn't really think much of it. But the fact that to kind of ascribe his forgetfulness to the shaitan, it adds a different kind of a different light to this landscape. It demonstrates that this person was not actually an ungrateful person, but he just forgot. Okay, so that's what it was. I mean, you could take it literally in the sense that the shaitan actually was at play in making him forget. You could take it like that, or you could just use this as a literary device to understand that, well, he wasn't being ungrateful by forgetting. It was just he forgot. He was actually a grateful person. Cool, guys. I think with that we better wrap it up. It's been a hell of an evening. It's gone past 1. Oh, I need to stretch out my my foot. Inshallah, make dua. It's not fractured. I don't want it to be fractured. So cool, guys. Take very good care of yourselves. Till next week. Any issues, reach out to me on Instagram, on Facebook Messenger. I respond better to the Facebook Messenger messages than I do to the other ones, because it's easier to send a voice note response. Guys, take very good care of yourselves. As always, much love. Mwah. Stay blessed. Stay laughing wherever you are. Keep learning. Over and out, people. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.